Hello, friends and enemies, heroes and villains. Welcome to Epic Realms. Today's guest is an author, game designer, RPG designer, and Epic Realms alumni. He is the mastermind behind the Marvel RPG. Please welcome Matt Forbeck back to Epic Realms. How are you doing, Matt?
Good, Nick. Thank you for having me on again.
I love having you on. I love chatting with you. If we could just chat constantly, once a week, that would be super cool. But
Yeah,
nobody's got
well,
time for that because you've been a busy guy.
aren't we all? I mean, come on. Yeah, it's you got to make a living, right? It's capitalism. So
When you were on before, and not to put a feather in our cap, the last time you were on, we talked about the RPG from Marvel. It was
yep,
still in the playtest, and I had to jump through hoops, and we were the first ones that weren't associated with Marvel that you were allowed to talk to about that.
that's
And
true.
I still talk about that. I'm like, hey, we were the first ones. You heard it here first, sort of situation. But it's been a wild ride since then. You've got some stuff that has come out, some expansions, some
Yep.
extra books, things like that. Did the Marvel Multiverse, did it do better than you expected it to? Did it do about what you thought?
I don't know. I don't know what I expected. I try to keep my expectations outside of my head when I'm working on something. Right. I don't try to think about how well it's going to be received because it tends to throw you as far as what you're working on. If you start thinking about who's going to read this, who's going to play this, whatever, too much, or how many people really, not who, but how many,
Right.
then that starts to, I think, warp things. So I don't tend to think about it too much. But all that said, the game did very well, right? I mean, I think we're on our third printing, moving to a fourth printing at the moment. And it actually went back to press before it even shipped back in 2023. So that it's done very well for us. And we got another expansion coming out. The We've had so far. We had the Cataclysm of Kang, which was an adventure that came out.
Right.
That is a big, thick, 256-page book with 6 adventures in it. Actually, they're linked together. Then we had the X-Men expansion came out last summer. We also had a Deadpool adventure come out for it called Deadpool Role Plays Marvel Universe, which is
Yeah.
like a page comic that Cullen Bunn wrote, and they did a great job with. And then we also had the Spider-Verse book, which is coming out in February next month. Holy cow! Yeah, so
We're almost there. We're almost
you can
there.
tell it's been rusty for me too. I mean, you take the holidays off, and I'm like, yeah, I haven't done any publicity or this kind of stuff for a while, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I have to talk to people online now instead of people at Christmas time. Um, and then we have another book that we haven't announced that's coming out sometime this summer, which hopefully Marvel will talk about soon. But until they do, I can't.
Yeah, that's right. That's understandable. Tell us about the evolution, because like I said, last time you were on, we were just talking about the playtest. What
Yeah.
was the big progression between the playtest and then going to the main book? What was the work on that like and the progression between the two?
Well, when we were doing the play test, I had a game design partner on that, a guy named Mike Caps, who did some work on it, and he ended up having to leave the project. So then it was over into my hands. And because of that, instead of having a conversation with him about how it should be, a lot of it came down to me working with the guys directly from Marvel, right? And CJ Cervantes, Amir Osman, and Brian Overton and the crew I work with over there, fantastic guys, and they're very good at asking me questions like, um, who's going to play this? How is this going to work? What's going to happen? And making the game as good as it can be, right? So we did a little bit of work about trying to figure out who we wanted our audience to be, which is going to be essentially people who already play role playing games like Dungeons and Dragons,
Yeah.
and people who might be curious about those things but haven't tried it yet, but are Marvel fans, right? And those, the Marvel fans who say, "Oh, geez, I'd really like to play a role playing game, but I can't stand fantasy like wizards
Right.
and pointy ears are too geeky for me, but spandex and capes, I'm all over." So yeah, so we went and tried to tackle those kind of audiences. But the game originally, the playtest edition was fairly crunchy and more for a hardcore kind of audience, and we really did trim it down. I mean, it's still got a lot of crunch in it. It's still got a lot of uh, areas that if you're a hardcore gamer, you can sink your teeth into it. But if you're just a new gamer coming across, 10 years old and up can learn how to play the game easily, right? Especially if you got a parent there helping you out, it's really fairly simple. But we streamlined the game a lot. We made it a lot simpler to play and learn, and I think it's become a much better game for that too. I mean, it's the ways we messed with the dice system, everything else really made it feel much more like a blockbuster game as opposed to an attrition game, right? A lot of role playing games, especially D&D, tend to be attrition games in combat where you're like, let's see how many hit points we go and let's see how we can wear down the other side, right?
Yeah.
And the way we re-engineered the dice system, it's much more of a let's see if I can line up the best shot I possibly can and then put in that haymaker that's going to knock the guy out like
Right.
Thanos, whatever. And it works much better that way. It feels much more like a Marvel game because of that, as opposed to a generic role-playing game, right? So we really leaned into making it a Marvel game as opposed to a generic supers game or even a generic role-playing game in general. This really does feel like Marvel from one end to the other, and that was really our intent.
Yeah. Was there anything major specific in the playtest that you're like, we need to fix this?
Yeah, I mean, there are things like the math was just getting too complicated, right? There were certain points where you having to add together like three different three-digit numbers, and I thought it was just too much, right? So we really trimmed it down. Originally, we had like 25 different ranks in it, right? And then we trimmed it down to six, just to try to focus it down tighter. And then because of that, we're able to say, well, what happens if we do multiplication and do a one roll to hit and damage system, right? So for instance, in the original system, you would roll 3d6 and it would give you a certain number of points for hitting, and then you'd have to roll for damage and blah, blah, blah. Kind of like a D&D type system, right? You roll against a target number, then you roll your damage depending on what you're doing. But the new system says whatever rank you are from 1 to 6, you take that and you multiply it by the Marvel die, which is one of the three six-sided dice that you roll. And that is actually your damage, right? So if you're a rank 4 person, you roll a 6 on your Marvel die, you do 24 points of damage, right? Now, if you do the Marvel result, which is the 1 on the Marvel die, that actually counts as a critical hit. Essentially, we call it a fantastic result, which gives you double damage for that. So instead of doing 24 points of damage, you do 48 points of damage. You'd like really do that haymaker on the guy because the 1 counts as a 6 and also gives you that special effect. If you're using a power, it gives you another special effect that's listed with each power. It can be something like stunning somebody, blinding them, doing additional kind of wacky things depending on whatever it happens to be. But the neat thing about that is that, for instance, if you're playing a game like D&D and you're like, okay, I backstabbed Tiamat and I got double damage. I got that critical hit. I got the
Right.
20. And I'm like, okay, roll for damage. I got a 4. It's like all that effort went into this, and the damage roll just kind of screws you, right? You're just, well, that's just how the game works. But with this, what happens is, let's say you're Spider-Man taking on Thanos, and you really got to put everything you possibly can into this one big punch
Yeah.
because you're gonna be lucky to land it in the first place. So your target number for hitting him is going to be higher. Because of that, the dice you're going to roll have to be higher, which means that Marvel die is going to tend to be a higher number. And when you land the punch, it's going to tend to be a much bigger dice roll for you, a bigger result for you. And also people, because you can actually affect the dice rolls with karma and by trying to get edges and such, people assisting you in it, those give you more and more chances to re-roll some of the dice and get that Marvel die higher and higher, which means when you do make that big hit, especially if it's a fantastic result, people literally cheer. I've seen like entire groups at the Glass Cannon guys do the game at New
Yeah.
York Comic Con and San Diego Comic Con, and like literally the entire crowd will cheer when that happens. And it really makes you feel like you're part of something special when that goes off. And even when you're playing around a table with friends or at a convention or whatever, it's just amazing watching people's eyes light up and go, yes, you get that real sense of triumph when that comes out. And it's engineered into the dice that way. The funny part is that it's never explained in the rules that way. Like, okay, this is what we did to make this happen. It just happens. It's natural. It's an elegant solution that came out of the playtesting. We probably wouldn't have come up with it if we hadn't gone through that first public playtest and had such great feedback from so many people.
That's great. I love it. Not many game companies do that playtest, and a lot of people, when that came out, they're like, "Oh, do I really want to? Does this make sense?"
Yeah.
And here we see these are the fruits of the labor. This is why you do that playtest that you release early,
Yeah.
so
I
you
mean,
can get stuff
the
like that.
trick
It's
is it's
amazing.
hard to playtest something with something as complicated as a tabletop game like Magic the Gathering or Dungeons and Dragons or any top role playing game. It's hard to play test that on anything other than the entire market, right? There's so many different combinations and so many different situations you can find yourself in that it's almost impossible. One group of people, or even a really large group of decent people who are playtesting with you, they can't really match having tens of thousands of people play the game,
Right.
right? Because they're going to come up with ideas that other people don't. Those fringe things were like, oh wait a minute, what about this? I'm like, well, nobody's noticed that before. Holy cow! Right?
Well, there's the
Uh,
word of mouth thing too,
yeah,
where it's kind of also a publicity sort of thing where it's like you get it out there so people can play it. People play it. They want to try it. They want to get their own book so they can look at it, so they can read it, so that they can try it, so that they can give feedback. And it just kind of spread like wildfire. And it did. Because I don't know anybody who didn't get that first playtest that was really interested into it. Everybody did, and convinced other people who weren't that interested to go and get the playtest and try it. And had that playtest not come out and just waited for the main book, I don't know if it would have done the same.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we would have had a big launch either way, but I think having that $10 entry point into getting in the book really did a lot of good for us. I mean, obviously, if we're all geniuses, we would have gotten right out the gate. But I have to tell you, and I've been doing game design for like 35 years. Nobody ever gets it right straight out the gate, and that's one of the reasons you see second or third editions of games a lot of the time, or even fifth or sixth, whatever, is because as a game developer, you're never done tinkering with a game. You're always coming up with ways to make it better.
Yeah.
And they say games aren't finished, they're just published, right? At a certain point, somebody taps you on the shoulder and says, we need what you have because we're running out of money and we need to get this out of the market. And so let's put it out there. It's good. It's good. It's not perfect, but it's good. Let's get it out there and get it in front of a lot of people. And then we can try to build on and improve it from there. I mean, every book we've come out with since then, we've added more stuff to the game too, right? New rules and new things. And kind of building out the whole thing, because the main game is kind of like, it's this beautiful one trick house, right? It does everything it's supposed to do really well, but then there's all sorts of other things you can do, especially with the Marvel game, because they have so many different genres they tap into. And so every time we do another book, we're basically tapping into a whole different group of things that we try to theme around that book and build out the rules that make the game even better and stronger and more powerful for people, hopefully.
Right. You mentioned the expansions that had come
Yeah.
out so far. Who chooses what the expansion is and what goes in that? Do you get a call? Is there a meeting where you're all in a room going like, what should we come out with an expansion? Let's do X-Men, let's do Spider-Verse.
Well, basically I sit down on a Zoom call, kind of like this, with the guys from Marvel. My son Marty sits in with me. He does all the profiles and such for the game, and starting to write chapters of the game too, for the different expansions. And we sit around and say, okay, what do we think is going to be the next coolest thing? Not just from a gameplay point of view, but to be fair, like what's coming out from Marvel Studios that year? What's going to be the most exciting thing? What are people going to be excited about? Like for instance, when the X-Men book came out last year, the X-Men '97 cartoon was being launched. I'm like, oh, that's great. We can kind of ride on the coattails of that. Now, because it's Marvel, you can ride on a lot of coattails, right? In the course of a year, you have a lot of choices. It's not just the one thing. But we sit down, we try to think, okay, what's the right thing to do here? And we also try to not do just what everybody expects, right? Because a lot of people would say, well, obviously you're doing an Avengers book first. I'm like, maybe not. Maybe we should do an X-Men book first. And maybe we should do a Spider-Verse book. Let's do the things that we're passionate about, that we think give us different and interesting ways to build out the game. And then if we want to do a book like that, we can come around to it later, right? Or we might decide we don't need that kind of a book. Maybe we want to do something else. So we actually have a 5-year plan that's been written out. And like every other plan, once it meets contact with reality, it shatters. And we reboot it and we redo it and revise it as we have to over and over again, just to make sure that we have this idea, this direction we want to go in. And right now, even though we're only 2 years into the game, not even 2 years into the game, a year and a half into the actual game, because it came out summer of 23. August of 23. We've already got more books out than any other version of the game since the original Yellow Box game, right? Because all the other versions of the game had unfortunate, sad fates where they only got out like the basic book or the basic set and then crashed after that for whatever reason. And they all had separate, different reasons. But I mean, the fact that we're still going, a year and a half into it, and still have plans for another 2 books coming out and more after that, that tells me we're doing something right here. It's a vibrant game. We have more people getting into it all the time, and I'm pretty excited about it. It's easy for me as a freelancer to say, well, I'll just wander off and do something else. But I mean, honestly, if the money is right and everything's good, I would write Marvel games forever. I love doing Marvel stuff. It's one of my favorite things of all time. So when somebody comes up to you and says, do you want to do a Marvel role-playing game? You're like, 2 of my favorite things? Come on. Yeah, of course I do. So. Oh, I cannot hear you at all. What have I done? I don't hear
That was
you.
me. That was on me.
Good. It wasn't
Lost
me.
my voice.
Yay.
I was coughing and I muted myself and didn't unmute myself from the cough.
Good. I'm sitting there going, oh no, what have I done? So,
No, it wasn't on you. It was on me. On me. And we'll leave this all in. We'll leave it all in.
Fair
You
enough.
kind of have a history with Marvel though too, right? So
Oh yeah,
like you
I've
mentioned
done
that
lots
last
of stuff
time.
with Marvel. Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of stuff with Marvel over the years. I wrote two editions of the Marvel Encyclopedia. I wrote an Avengers Encyclopedia. I've written some of their official Marvel Handbook stuff. I worked on a couple different Marvel video games, just doing dialogue for different characters. I worked on I had a game called Marvel Heroes Battle Dice, which came out from Playmates Toys back around almost 20 years ago now, maybe longer. Jeez. But that was a lot of fun too. So, in a lot of, I've been doing comic book work even since before that. The guy who actually got me into doing this game was a guy named John Nee, who was a publisher of Marvel Comics at the time. I had met John when I was working on the Wildstorms collectible card game way back in the mid 90s. So,
Yeah.
and he had brought me on for that. And so we kept in touch over the years and been friends. So when he was looking for somebody to do the role playing game, he says, Matt, are you interested at all? I'm like, just grabbed him, said, didn't let go, said, John, yes, we're going to do this. I still see John every year at Comic Con at different places. He's a wonderful guy.
That's great. You've mentioned in the past, whether it's here or other places, that your kind of foot in the door or your big draw to the Marvel was Spider-Man, correct?
Oh, for sure, definitely.
What was it like to come up with the Spider-Verse, this new book for you?
I tell you, one of the funny things is once you get a job and you're doing something or a gig like this, and you're like, all right, I gotta get down and do this. And anytime you have to do something, it sucks some of the fun out of it, right? It's it's like if your teacher assigns your favorite book for you or your favorite author for you for a class, and you're like, okay, now I have to read this. It takes some of the fun out of it. But I'll tell you, I was Dan Slott was on, I think Facebook or Twitter or some such, and Dan's been writing Spider-Man for umpteen years now. And he says, a lot of mornings I just remind myself I don't have to write Spider-Man. I get to write Spider-Man. I'm like, yes, this is. So I embraced that as hard as I could, whenever I could. I'm like, this is exactly what I want to feel like. I wake up, I get to the desk, I'm like, okay, I get to write Spider-Man now. I get to read more Spider-Man comics. I get to think about how Spider-Man does things, and not just Spider-Man, Peter Parker, but Miles Morales and all the other ones, and
Right.
all the different characters in the Spider-Verse, including Ghost Spider, et cetera, et cetera. So, these guys have really built it out from just one character these days, including the movies and everything else. So it's been a real delight to be able to plunge into that. A lot of this stuff I already knew. Ken Hite once, I was at a convention with him and somebody said, how long did it take you to do the research of the Marvel Encyclopedia? And Ken leans over and says, just his whole life, right? So, because this, as a fan, that's what you've been doing. I've been
Right.
consuming this stuff since I was a young child, and it's great to go back and revisit stuff, some of which I hadn't read in decades, and to be able to just indulge in it all over again. It's been a lot of fun.
Do they send you for free all of the comics, or do you have to go buy them?
Oh no, I get Marvel Unlimited, which gives you like tons of. By the way, I'm going to plug Marvel
Yeah,
Unlimited
do
just
it.
because it's such a great damn deal. If you're interested in Marvel comics, I think over the holidays it was like $50 a year. Now it's like $70 a year, which still I could drop $70 walk into a comic book shop on any given week, right? So
Right.
this gives you a full year subscription to Marvel Unlimited, which gets you all of the comics Marvel has published up to the last 3 months. So if something comes out, then 3 months later it shows up on Marvel Unlimited. And it's not all of them because there's some pockets they're still scanning from the dark ages of the 70s and 80s and
Yeah.
such. But those are coming in too every week. You get more stuff every week. So if you're interested in Marvel comics and you want to read more of them and about them, it's a great way to go, right? And I actually just love just sitting there and read. New stuff comes out every week. Now they also end up giving me anything else I need. So if there's like, hey, we're working on the Spider Verse book, they're like, here's all the new Spider Verse stuff coming out for the next few months. In fact, here's some scripts for stuff that hasn't come out yet. When we were working on the X-Men book, for instance, they actually sent me some early stuff that was like, this is what they're thinking about for the new line after Krakoa falls, right? So to give you some ideas about where it's going to go. One of the things about doing a book like this is you never know, you know, at some point the book ships and the comics keep going, so they're going to go beyond it, right? And it might take 6 to 9 months for when you're done for the book to actually come out. So things are going to be beyond that. It's okay. And then the book will be out there for years probably before you come back and revisit this. So 5 years from now, somebody's going to go, wait, they haven't talked about all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, we did what we could at the time. Um, but we try to keep things as up to date as we humanly can. So Brian Overson over there always sends me out things. If I have any requests, he's like, yeah, here you go. They've got a service that just basically sends you PDFs of whatever they need. and it works really well. So they've been great guys to work with. And sometimes if I have a question, they'll ask the editor on that book and say, "Hey, what did you mean by this, or what's going on here, or what are the plans here? Do we need to deal with this?" And sometimes the answer is yes, this is very important. And other times, like, nah, you can just glide by that and move on to the next thing. So
Yeah. Let's go back to the Spider-Verse book. What's in it? What can we expect? What can you talk about?
what can I talk about? Nothing that Marvel hasn't already said. That's how it works. Um, but I mean, there's been some stuff we've already talked about. There's some, like I think we mentioned, we have gadget rules are coming up in it, and it's tons and tons of stuff about the different Spider Verses. I don't even think we've mentioned. We have a couple other writers who joined us on this one, so I probably shouldn't mention their names quite. Maybe we can. I don't know if it's been online. I can, but I've
No, don't worry
talked
about it. You don't.
stuff up. So
If you're not sure, don't
um,
do it. Don't get
yeah,
us in. We don't need
exactly,
to get in trouble.
exactly,
We don't need to
right.
get me in trouble. You'll probably be
Or
fine.
me. No, no, no. They'll come up and say, "What the heck?" It'll be a slap on the wrist. But yeah, I try to be respectful of the PR department
Right.
and not slip loose things that they would rather, put a bow on and present to the public in their respective time.
Yeah.
Right. That's their job. These guys really know what they're doing. These people are fantastic about it. Marvel's got a great PR team. If you're listening, and I'm always really thrilled to work with them. So I don't want to step on anybody's toes.
Right.
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 I,
And
I do
I'm
that for
very much the same way.
anyone I'm
I'm like,
working
I'm
with.
not
Right.
here for the scoop. I'm just here to have a
No,
good story
exactly.
and talk. A good scoop is great, but if it's just like a bland, we got this, whatever. It's like I'd rather just talk and have a story, have
Yeah,
fun.
exactly.
So
I mean, the Spider-Verse book is going to have a lot of really good stuff in it. It's going to have none of the expansions we do have adventures in them. I'll tell you that we do adventures separately if and when we do them, because we want them to be more timeless, right? Things that are like you're going to buy this book and you're going to have this stuff and you're going to have the rules and all the history and all this other great stuff and tons of profiles, usually 80 to 100 profiles in each book. So you can go and just take these characters and play with them. But we don't really want to do adventures in those because they tend to, once you've played them, then you're done. That section of the book you just want to throw away, or not have. And so those things that you're going to churn through quickly, as opposed to using as reference material, we'd rather have someplace separate, right? I know not every designer in the world agrees with me. We've had conventions where people go, "Should there be an adventure in the core book?" I'm like, "No." And they're like, "Come on." I think the core book should be the core book. You should have an adventure that comes out at the same time that people can play. You should have other adventures that
yeah,
show people what you're going to do. But I don't think they're always particularly useful in a core book. And I think they take up a lot of space that could otherwise be used for things that are more pertinent to what people are going to need over the
yeah,
long run. But that's also thinking long run as opposed to let's hook them in now, right?
right,
Uh, and when we were doing the Marvel game, we always wanted to think long run. We want to think, okay, this game's going to be out for 5 or 10 years or longer. How do we want people to look at this 5 or 10 years from now, as opposed to just now?
yeah.
Obviously, we want people to buy it and enjoy it at the moment, but we also want people to be able to use it for years and years and years too.
Speaking of the time frame, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, there have been multiple iterations of a lot of these characters.
Sure.
How does the game tackle? Do you get the option of being like, I want to play 1960 Spider-Man versus
Oh, sure.
1990 Spider-Man? Do you get to
Yeah,
see
most of the
those?
stuff we focus on is going to be the current day stuff, right? But in the Spider-Man book, like for instance, I know we released the entire character list, so I can talk about this. Um, we have rules for an early, starting out Spider-Man from when he was just, in high school. So we have a profile for that. We have a profile for Miles without he's actually, since Core Book came out, he's developed a few more powers for Miles Morales. So we've actually got a new profile for him that encompasses that stuff. We even have a couple of versions of the characters from the Insomniac games, right? So the video games that came out from Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2, we have some versions of the characters from that. So you can play those versions too. And one of the reasons we did a complete character creation system in the game is so if you have a version of the character you want to play, we want you to make it up. We totally encourage people to go do that, right? One of the biggest fights we had, fight, argument, whatever, disagreements about the game at one point was like, Daredevil should be, what rank should Daredevil be, right? He's a character that's beloved by many. A lot of people love the TV show. And I'm like, yeah, but he's really just a blind guy whose powers help him overcome being blind. He's a really kick butt martial artist, not really, powerful in the sense of Spider-Man or even Wolverine or whatever. So I had him in a rank 2, and they're like, "No, he's going to be a rank 3 or rank 4." I'm like, "No, rank 2. Besides which, we need some rank 2 heroes. We need to show people how to do this." But so we did that. But I mean, the trick with Daredevil is, the Frank Miller Daredevil is different from the Stan Lee Daredevil.
Right.
Is the Chip Zdarsky Daredevil is different from the Brian Michael Bendis Daredevil. So go make your own version. Find the one that you love the most and tweak it to your own taste. Right. That's why the character creation rules are there. We're just trying to provide you with examples. And honestly, I could probably fill a whole book with different Peter Parker Spider-Man, much
Right.
less all the other Spider-Verse characters.
Right. Exactly. So one of the reasons I thought about that, I was like, with the Spider Verse, nobody knows what's in it, but yeah, how does it tackle that thing? On a similar note, because I want to get your opinion, because you're a big Spider-Man fan, what did you think of No Way Home?
I loved it. I love all the Spider-Man movies, right? No Way Home was a lot more fun for me because of all the different multiversal stuff, right? Which really taps into what we're doing here.
Right.
When I first came up with the title for the game, for the multiverse game, I was actually just pitching a bunch of stuff, and they're like, "Oh, Marvel Multiverse, you say?" And I was actually just riffing off the Marvel Universe game that came out in 2001,
Right.
and they're like, "Yeah, you should go with that." I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about, but okay, sure." But it worked out pretty fortuitously,
Yeah.
obviously. Uh, but yeah, I'm a big fan of stuff. I mean, plus I loved all those movies, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield and all those, going all the way back. I mean, I remember days when, you would pray for a good superhero movie to come along because there weren't any at all. I mean, we may have a deluge of wonderful things nowadays, but that's a veritable feast from which you can pick and choose, and that's a fantastic thing. So to see something where they bring in all that history, all the different things you've seen, and then bind them together in a way that you can actually feel like they're important to the plot that's going on right there and care about them. That's fantastic. I love that stuff.
As much as I loved how they brought the first Avengers movie together and brought all those characters
Uh,
together, I felt like, and I still feel like No Way Home did that, but better, in my
yeah,
opinion, because it just felt special. It felt way more special to bring all those characters in and what they did and the stories they told, not just on an overall arc, but everybody's individual character story.
yeah. I think part of it though is that the Avengers are a team, right? They're like, you walk in, it's like a football team coming up at you, right? Just so you can love the individual members of the team, you can love them as a team overall, but it's a major force coming at you. Whereas Spider-Man is one dude, and now it's more people because of all the different Spider-Verse stuff, but it's one guy and it's very intimate in that sense, right? You're thinking about different versions of Peter Parker that you've loved over the years, and here comes Pete, or the Pete from the '80s and the Pete from the '90s and the Pete from the aughts and whatever, and suddenly you get to have all of them. But because it's one person, it's a much more intimate thing, I think, right? You have a different relationship with it than you do when it's just this massive team that comes in like that.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned earlier that your son was working with you on some of the multiverse stuff as well as other things. What is that like working with your son on all of these different projects?
It's actually fantastic. The first time he said he wanted to do it when he got out of college, I'm like, "Are you sure?" Right? Because um, the creative life, doing things creatively for a living, is hard. And it's not just because he didn't have the skills or the talents, which he clearly did. And obviously, he had me to help him out and coach him and all that kind of stuff and teach him the ropes of the business. But I mean, I've seen so many of my friends over the years, over the decades, who got into it and then burnt out or got burned on something and left. And they were, some of them are, not happy about it. They're bitter about it because it changes your relationship with your creativity and how you feel about what you're doing. I didn't want him to have to go through that.
Yeah.
Fortunately, on the other hand, I don't think that's a good reason to not give it a shot, right? I think when I'm talking to other people about it, I always try to say, start out when you're young, give it a shot when you're young, because it's a lot easier to try it when you don't have a mortgage or spouse or kids or car payments or other people relying on you generally, right? You
Right.
can live cheaply, you can devote yourself to this, you can give it all your all, and then if it doesn't work, you can go on and do whatever the heck else your life comes to, right? And there's no shame in it, whatever, you gave it a shot. Sometimes things don't work. A lot of luck goes into this. It's not a reflection upon you as a human being or your talent or skill when things don't work out. Sometimes it just doesn't work. A lot of times it just doesn't work, right? And I've been really fortunate in my life to have a lot of really good mentors and be lucky to be in the right place at the right time. Doesn't mean I don't work hard, but I also realize that a lot of it is just, blind fortune, right? Now, in Marty's sense, I can kick the doors open for him, so that helps quite a bit. Nepotism 101, right?
Right.
Uh, but it's also like he doesn't quite have the hustle I had because I'm really a an extrovert, right? When it comes to that, I'll go knock on doors and say, "Hey, you need to give me work." Um, which I haven't had to do for like 10, 12 years nowadays, which is kind of nice. But now when people call me up and they say, would you like to have, work on this project? I can say, I'd love to, but I don't have the time. But my son here, he's awesome. And I'll make sure he does a great job. He's actually really easy to edit. He does fantastic work. In fact, we had that thing happen for a World of Warcraft book. Dark Horse Comics contacted me and said, "Are you interested in writing World of Warcraft Chronicle 4?" Which is one of these big, thick coffee table books they do. It's
Yeah.
fully illustrated. They had done 3 in-house, and they had finally licensed out the 4th one to Dark Horse to do it. And I said, no, actually, I don't know enough about it or really love World of Warcraft enough. I didn't play it really all that much. I mean, I tried it a few times,
Yeah.
but Marty had been playing it for years on and off. And I said, well, but Marty, are you interested? He's like, yes, I'll do that. So, and I said, would you guys be okay if I bring him in to do the work and I make sure it's good and whatever? And he wrote like 90 to 95% of that book and did a bang up job with it.
Yeah.
And then we got to go sign it at Comic-Con last year in the Dark Horse Comics booth, right? The two of us, which was fantastic fun. Although the best part for me was when people would come up and they're like, Matt and Marty Forbeck, and they look at us and go, "Are you guys brothers?" And he would just cringe into a tiny hole, right? Just going, "Oh my God, I don't look that old." And I'm like, "Thank you, This happened 3 times during the signing. I was like,
Wow.
thank you, Paul." Um, so that was my big pleasure and delight to see that happen. But I still give him a hard time over it. So.
It's not that he looks older, it's that you look younger. That's
No, that's what I keep trying to tell him, right? So he's like, yeah, we actually did have a hell of a day getting there. Our flights got canceled. We ended up
oh
getting
no.
booked into LA instead of San Diego. And we got on the last 2 standby seats to get to San Diego. And they had actually bumped our signing back 2 hours so we could get to it in time. And so, we were both a little haggard at this point, going, oh, geez, it's been a long day. So I don't blame him for looking a little tired at that point, but
Yeah.
we had a ball. It was a great time. We ended up hanging out with the Marvel guys too, and doing some stuff with UC San Diego, who's been doing some stuff with my Shotguns and Sorcery property, which is a D&D setting, and novels and comics and
Yeah.
other shit. So,
And now you got Minecraft.
yes, we do Minecraft too. I've done a couple different novels for Minecraft. I did one for Minecraft Dungeons and Minecraft Legends. And then they asked me if I was interested in doing a Minecraft game book, which is actually kind of like a choose your own adventure, but with dice.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's not quite a
and
role play, but it kind of is.
yeah, you can use it as a role play. I mean, if you wanted to sit down and have like a parent and a child could really do, I'm going to read through this, then we'll play this part together, and then I'll read the next section depending on where it tells us where to go, right?
Yeah.
So you can certainly do one-on-one role playing with it, although it's not your traditional role playing in the sense that it doesn't have like you know I guess you do kind of build a character, but I mean you don't have like your dungeon master or whatever your
Right.
Minecraft saying or your craft master. That's what it should be, right? So,
There you go. Craft
uh,
Master.
saying here's the adventure I just came up with. You could. I mean, there's nothing stopping anybody. In fact, I encourage that kind of creativity. But it's basically, choose your own adventure, but then you get to certain points, there's dice. Kind of like the old Death Trap dungeon stuff, the old stuff that Ian Livingston did back in the day,
Yeah.
which, I was a big fan of as well. So even going back to Rose Estes doing the original Endless Quest books, right, which didn't have dice. Those were pick a path books, but
Yeah.
still great fun and very inspiring. Um, and so that book's going to come out in July, I think. It's going to be kind of interesting because it's going to be a hardcover book. I think it's hardcover. It'll come with actually 4 dice packed in with it, right? I'm not even sure how they're going to do it because I haven't actually seen it yet. So we'll see. We'll all get to learn together. They've assured me that the people doing production all know what they're doing, and it's going to look fantastic. But the cover looks great. The game looks like a lot of fun. I hope everybody enjoys it when it comes out. But for that, I basically did the logic stuff and outlined things out. And then I said, okay, Marty, I'm going to give you this section, and I'm going to write this section, and then we'll make sure they all line up together, right? And he did a great job with it again. So it's been really fun to work with him, right? It's kind of strange thinking about being a game designer and writer as a family business, but it's almost like Forbeck and Son on the side of the van as we pull up to your place and break out the dice.
Right. That's great. What is it like dynamic wise if there's something that's not right? Is there a do you have to separate father and son and just this is work?
Oh,
Or can you do them both, or how does that work out? Because
I have trained
you're
my
grounded.
children not. Yeah, no, I've trained my children to not be afraid of me. So, So when I'm wrong, he's not shy about telling me. He's like, no, I think, well, yeah, we try to both be respectful, right? I mean, we've got a good relationship with each other and always have. I hopefully have with all my kids, but I mean, the idea being that I'm here to listen. If it's my project, it has my name on it, I get to have the final say on it, right? I'm the elder statesman
Yeah,
here, so to
yeah,
speak. But that doesn't mean I don't want to listen to what you're saying. And then I'm going to explain to you why I think you're wrong. And we're going to come to an agreement about who is right or what the right path to take is. Because again, it's not really about who is right. You shouldn't be, when people are working on a creative project, they tend to take it very personally because they see themselves in it, right? But it's not about you. It's not about your ego. It's about the work. It's about the finished project, right? That's what the only thing people really care about is the finished project. They don't care about who decided what or what came to where or whatever. They only talk about the finished project. If you're in a creative writing class, you turn in a paper, you get bad feedback, you think, oh, people hate me. They don't hate you. They just didn't like what you did that one time, right? So
right.
again, when we're working over this stuff, it's not about winning an argument or being right or wrong. It's about what's best for the project, right? And that's one of the things Marty and I have really embraced the Marvel stuff too. Like a lot of the great ideas come from within Marvel too. I guess sometimes it's playtesters that come with great ideas. I am really just a custodian of that, right? I'm not here to say I'm brilliant and you guys should all whatever. It's like no. Part of it, especially in game design, the line between fan and professional is really fuzzy, right? We all start out as fans. I go to games, conventions and play games myself. I play tons of games. So there's, when you're running a game line or being part of a game line, it's really just a matter of uh, being a caretaker for what's happening, as opposed to being, and trying to lead the direction of it sometimes, but not really being like, handing down tablets from the top of the mountain and saying, this is what it is, peons enjoy. It's nothing like that. So when I'm working with Marty, it's also the same thing. He says, "What about this?" Like we just had a conversation today about this weapon that a character is going to be using in the upcoming book, and how do we look at this? How is it going to work in the system? What does he think? What do I think? And do we need to ask the editors over Marvel about this? Which was actually what we ended up doing, and then we'll take their feedback on that, and they ended up sending us comic books that we needed to be able to read that we weren't even out yet, so we could figure out what the answer to this question was. But our normal daily stuff is very smooth and easy. Marty does great work. It's very easy to work with, and doesn't complain when I edit his stuff, so it works out pretty well. So, in one sense, though, like I work with other writers too on the line, and I'm always like, "Yeah, Marty's doing great. Look what he's doing compared to these guys." Well, I'm like, "Yeah, but I've been coaching him since he was like 5,
Right.
right? Do things the way I like it to be done." So that's probably why he's hitting that mark really well every time. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Do you guys play video games together as well?
We do. He doesn't live in the house anymore. Although he moved away to Appleton a couple of years ago and then just moved back to Beloit, where I am right now, back in October. So we don't do as much video game stuff. Like I'm not a big multiplayer video game guy, but he'll recommend stuff for me. Like he got me hooked on the Like a Dragon, the Yakuza games, which I freaking adore. And I played every one of them just all the way through 100% of everything because I just love them. So we don't play games like that together. Usually when we get together with the family, we'll play tabletop games, right? So we actually, when he and his wife moved back to town, we ended up starting out Thursday night game nights. So we do Thursday night games where I make pizza for the family, and then whoever wants to play games plays games until everybody wants to go home. So, and sometimes we pick things that we just are interested in. Other times we work on things like Patrick, we're actually bringing in a project right now too. My eldest, well, one of the the quadruplets, uh, got a degree in game design back in March, no, May. And he's still looking for a job in that field because it's a very hard field right now. There's like
Yeah, right now it's really difficult.
tens of thousands of layoffs. There's about 10,000 layoffs every year for the last 3 years. So it's very hard to find a job. And so we're corralling him and helping us out with some of the tabletop stuff. So sometimes for game night, we'll sit down and say, we need to play this so we know what we're doing, or we need to play test this thing we're working on. And other times it's like, no, we're playing, Martian Dice and Love Letter. And we played Skull the other night, which turns out to be a really fun little bluffing game that my kid Helen sometimes struggles with some of the games, but with Skull, like smacked us around. Right? Like won the first 2 out of the 3 games. We're like, Helen, what the heck? So, and it's always a good sport for any kind of game we're playing too. So it's great.
So when you guys were working on Minecraft, did you play a lot of Minecraft on the side and be like just to get in the
But you know
groove?
what? I am not a great Minecraft player, to be honest with you. My kids play a lot more than I do. But the funny part is like all my kids will play it together. Like Patrick has actually set up a private server and they all play whatever mods they want to play. And if I have any questions about the property, like I'm like, does it work like this? I think it works like this. I've played through dungeons, and I played some legends and all this kind of stuff, and I played some of the basic Bedrock and Java games and all that. But I'm not a hardcore Minecraft addict like some of them are. So when I have a question, of course, there's wikis and stuff you can go to. There's really nothing like actually having playing the game and seeing it done in front of you. So
Right.
I'll go over and pick on Nicholas. I say, Nicholas, how does this work? He goes, oh, Dad, let me show you. So it's great to have them as a resource for all that stuff.
That's great. What are your thoughts on there's a new game that just came out,
Hmm.
new video game that just came out, and I know
There are new
that you
games. Excellent.
have done some stuff with it because from what I read, there is a little add-on for Marvel Rivals.
Yes, I haven't done anything with the video game, and I have not played the video game yet.
Okay.
Patrick and Marty have both played the hell out of it and had a great time with it. I'm actually eager to get it. I haven't installed on my Xbox right now, but I haven't actually pulled the trigger on it because I've been working on deadlines and other stuff. So,
Yeah.
in fact, I haven't played a whole lot of video games the last 3 months because I've been working on
Oh
trying to
no.
catch up with deadlines. I know it's kind of like I want to play this stuff. I want to have fun. But on the other hand, bills got to be paid, and more to
Right.
the point, I have people relying on me to turn things in, so I'm not the bottleneck in the process. Um, but yeah, the Marvel Rival stuff was mostly done in house. So it was Amir and CG and Brian who did a lot of that stuff. And
Okay.
part of the neat thing about that is that the Marvel Games desk, right, that's in the office, is like right next to theirs, right? There's like an office that's like they could practically throw a tennis ball at it and hit
Oh
it, right?
nice.
So, um, so when they have an idea for something, they could say, "Hey guys," and just step into the office wherever and talk to them about it, or go out to lunch and jaw about it for a bit. So I think that's where the Marvel Rivals thing came from. And also having done the stuff with Insomniac for the Marvels for the Spider-Man Spider-Verse expansion, I think you might end up seeing more of that kind of stuff in the future. Really, it's just a good working relationship. That's the kind of thing. I'm not a big fan of like people having to go into the office or anything like that, but that's the kind of thing where because you're sitting next to somebody who you're working on this kind of stuff with, you can just kind of tap them and say, "Hey, can you help me out with this?" And the ideas just spring out of that.
Yeah. That's super awesome. I thought it was so cool when they're like, yeah, we're gonna release some of these characters from Rivals for the multiverse.
Yeah.
It's like
No,
that is super cool. That is and so timely too to get in on that a little bit of a crossover genre for things. So
no. And the neat thing about it is because you're just doing it online for free as a promotional thing. It's you don't have to worry about print times and all this kind of stuff and solicitations, whatever. It's just like, hey guys, we have an idea for something fun. Let's do something fun together. And that's one of the things I really like about these guys. It's not just about obviously, we want to make money at it because otherwise we can't keep doing this, right? We
right,
want people to buy this stuff, whatever. But
needs to
it's
be
also about
sustainable.
making sure everybody's having fun.
Yeah. I want to end today's show with us. Obviously, we've got the Q&A at the end afterwards,
Sure.
but I'd like you to tell us a little bit about the Diana Jones Award, what it
Yeah.
is, what people can get from that, just tell us about it.
All right. So for more information, I'll lead off with that. Go to dianajonesaward.org. We are currently a 501c3 nonprofit, and you can actually donate to us as a tax write-off for yourself if you can, right? Um, but it started out, the Diana Jones Award is a trophy that was originally a pub trophy that was traded back and forth between the ex-TSR UK guys and Games Workshop back in the 80s, I think. And it was constructed from when TSR UK got shut down. The guys there took some of the stuff that was in the warehouse and burned it, including a copy of the Indiana Jones role-playing game. And the only part of the logo that was still legible was the part that said Diana Jones. So they took that and encased it in a plexiglass pyramid and put it on a wooden base and called it the Diana Jones Award. And they put this back and forth as a trivia trophy for many pub trivia trophy essentially for years. And then it just kind of disappeared into the bowels of Games Workshop at one point, I believe. And James Wallace ended up with it. And James is this great game designer. He's done tons of great story games, Once Upon a Time and The Extraordinary Adventures of Baron Munchausen, many other things, Las Vegas, etc. And he's like, I have a trophy here. I should do something with it. So he got a group of game designers together, mostly role-playing gamers from, I guess, about 2000 is when it happened. And he said, we're going to give out an award for excellence. And it's just whatever we define it to be. And we're going to make it, we're going to have fun. And he gave it away. I was on the original group. And he said, he came to Gen Con that year and said, Matt, can I give out the trophy at your party? Because I actually was my 33rd birthday party and my 20th Gen Con was on Gen Con Saturday that year. And I said, sure, that'd be fun. What the hell? And we ended up giving it to Peter Atkinson, who was the founder of Wizards of the Coast, and then later the owner of Gen Con and everything else. And it went over so well that people said, you should do this every year. Like, well, that's great, except I'm not going to fund the party every year. But so after that, we just kind of passed around a hat. Now it happened for beer money, essentially, drink tickets. And, and nobody has to drink. We have fun without alcohol too, just all kinds. But we have now Wednesday night before Gen Con every year for the last 24 years now. We have done this party, except for during COVID, obviously, and given out an award. So, been a lot of fun. I'm kind of stunned that it's still going. We usually have 400 or 500 people show up from the gaming industry. It's open to gaming industry people only, but still there's quite a few people in that now. And it's kind of like what you do when you go and you set up your booth and then you're done, you have some dinner, and then you go and hang out with your friends and eat. And everybody chats and talks, has a drink if they like, and then we give out the award. One of the neat things we've done over the last few years, we started this thing called the Emerging Designer Program, which was an
Yeah.
idea that Ken Hite came up with. And then we turned over to Camden, who so the idea was essentially Camden Wright. The idea was to come up with a way to use this notoriety that we've had and this attention that we have and turn the focus on people who might be able to use it better than some of us old farts who've been doing this for 20 years, right? So we find people in the first 3 years of their start in the adventure gaming industry, uh, tabletop stuff, and then say and have them apply or be nominated for it. And then we pick. Usually, it's been anywhere from 1 to 4 of them, and we fly them out to Gen Con. We get them a badge, we get them a room, we give them an honorarium of a couple $1,000, and then we put them up on the stage and say, "Hey, people, these are the new emerging designers we want to focus on this year." And we even have a table in the convention hall where you can go play their games with them, right? And it's really been a neat way to kind of take people that otherwise normally wouldn't be able to get to Gen Con or maybe are from communities that aren't traditionally part of game design, like we flew a woman from China a couple years ago, and bring them in for this kind of stuff, just so we can try to broaden the tent, so to speak, and make it better for everybody. And I've been really excited about it. I mean, I remember walking around Gen Con about 10, 15 years ago before, right when fourth edition Dungeons and Dragons was going, but fifth hadn't started. And I'm going around thinking, man, it's kind of stagnating here. We're just seeing a lot of old people, not a lot of young people. And I want to see more young people because if you have young people coming into your hobby, you have a thriving hobby, you have a thriving business you
Right.
can build on. But otherwise, you end up being model railroading guys. It's like grandpa's in the basement and nobody's doing this stuff anymore. I'm sure, yeah, I'm going to get letters from model railroad because I'm sure there's a vibrant community that I'm just not aware of.
There
But
is, there is.
yeah, exactly, right. And a lot of that crosses over with games. And actually, when we were starting out, we used to go to the remote control Toy and Hobby Association RICTA shows to sell games because the guys who did model railroads also did like miniatures, and those would work with miniatures for different games,
Yeah.
etc. So I mean, there's anyhow. I'm not trying to slag anybody, is what I'm saying, but I wanted to see fresh people, fresh faces coming into the industry to make sure that it would continue to grow and not just become something that we thought, oh yeah, I used to do that when I was a kid, kind of a thing, right?
Right.
And honestly, fifth edition's done a lot of good for that. Hopefully, the Diana Jones Award, especially with the Emerging Designer Program, is doing it as well. We've got a couple of great sponsors that have helped us out with that. We have, well, for one, Aaron Trammell, who works at UC Irvine, has helped out Camden quite a bit over the last couple of years while Cam has been struggling with some health issues and running the program with him and doing some great stuff. But we have the Bundle of Holding and Gen Con have been major benefactors for us. Alan Varnier runs the Bundle of Holding, which I actually helped him set up way back then. He ran the first few of them through my PayPal account because he didn't have one for himself at the time. And later on, he's like, Matt, if you, as soon as you become a 501c3, we can make you one of the charities that we have people donate to when we run our bundles. I said, great. So that's one of the reasons we did that. And then, suddenly we got a much bigger budget than we had before to
Yeah.
help bring these people out and enjoy Gen Con with us. And big thanks to Alan and his wife, Beth, for helping us out with that. And to all the other people who have donated to it over the last few years as well. It's been kind of amazing. Suddenly I found myself the president of a 501c3 with a board of directors. And I'm like, I don't know how I got here from, basically having a birthday party at Gen Con 30 or 20 some years ago. So
Yeah, it's a cool story and it's a cool organization. And when I had you on before and you talked about it and you invited me to the party, and
yeah,
I was like, this is so cool. And I made it, I said, every year, the winner I'm having on every year.
That's awesome.
That's my goal. So we've been doing that, and I look forward to continue to do that. And hopefully I can get to Gen Con this year and come and say hi in person and
That'd be
join with
fantastic.
all the fun. So
Now, I love Gen Con. It's my favorite time of year. I've been bringing my kids since they were 10 years old, and we just love it. It's for me, it's a family reunion and friends reunion and a business time and a big party and everything all wrapped together in one. Christmas is the only thing that comes close to it, right?
yeah. Everybody that wants to know, Gen Con is July 31st through August 3rd. That's in Indianapolis. Of course, you can also find Matt at Gary Con, March 20th through the 23rd. And that's in Lake Geneva, correct?
It is. That's Gary's kids started that. Gary died, I guess it'll be 16 years ago coming this year, 16 or 17, I forget. I had worked for Gary when I was in high school or college. I'd worked for him when I was in college as a freelancer for New Infinities. So I went to his funeral. But after his funeral, we all had a big reception at the American Legion Hall in downtown Lake Geneva and played games. And the family, everybody said, we should do this again, kind of like the Diana Jones Award.
Right.
And the family was like, yeah, you're right. We should do this. And now they have this massive convention that basically they constantly sell out and use the biggest venue in Lake Geneva now, the Geneva Grand. And it's a wonderful, wonderful event. Lots and lots of fun, especially if you like old school D&D. But it
Yeah,
also has lots of other great stuff there too. So be there if you can.
it's great. You're going to be at WonderCon basically the week after that. That's March 28th and 30th in Anaheim.
Yeah, that's gonna be a crazy month.
Yeah.
Yeah, they actually emailed me and said, that's I'm excited about that. I'm gonna be a guest of honor, a special guest at a very large comic convention that's run by the same people who run San Diego Comic Con, Comic Con International. So I'm excited about that. I feel very strongly for all the people in LA right now. That convention's in Anaheim, and oh, my heart's with all you. I mean, I know it's a hard time with seems like half the city burning at the moment, right?
Yeah. Anybody
And
listening, go
stay
ahead.
safe, gets better for it, you know.
Yeah. Donate to Red Cross. I know that they help all of those people. I know I had a small fire and lost my home when I was younger, and Red Cross was
Wow.
there for me
That's
immediately.
fantastic.
So definitely Red Cross, go and help them out, give donations. They are a really huge factor in helping all the people in California right now.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
we can find you on social media. Your website is forbeck.com.
Yep, forbeck.com. Come there and find me. You can email me. You can find me on social media. I join just about every social media when it starts, just because I want to make sure I get my name.
Yeah. You're on Facebook /Forbeck, Blue
Yep.
Sky, Forbeck.com. I got to find out how you didn't get the BSK dot blah blah. You
Oh,
got dot. How the heck
that's
did you do that?
that's how they do their verification, right? I was actually like, they just a couple months ago or whatever said, we've gotten this many members. This is what how early you were. I was like user 3,500 now out of the several million they have, or a few million they
Oh
have, right?
wow.
Because I just signed on immediately when they. In fact, I got on there before they actually had. You had to get an
You got to
invitation.
get a code. Yeah, I
Signed
had
up.
an invite code probably 3 months before they opened it up.
Yeah, exactly. And so so I even before they're giving out invite codes, they had a spot on their website where you would say, "Hey, are you interested? Can you put your email here?" And so before that, even I got an invite directly from them.
Nice.
It was, so one of the alpha points for doing that kind of stuff, which was neat.
Okay. Okay.
But the way you do it is you have to put some code on your website through your DNS server that will actually allow them to confirm that you, who own that account, are connected to whatever website it is,
Oh,
right?
okay.
And so it's not that technical. I do a little bit of my own web coding. It's all WordPress and such.
Yeah.
So I was able to figure it out myself and do it pretty easily. And that means that, somebody out there could probably say they were Forbeck.bluesky or whatever. Hopefully one of my kids will. Um, but we did that for the Diana Jones Award. So it's dianajonesaward.org as opposed to whatever, and Forbeck.com again, because that way you can verify that it's me as opposed to somebody else.
Yeah, that's great. Great idea. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
Also on Instagram and Threads, M Forbeck. You're on LinkedIn, Forbeck. You're everywhere, just like you said, everywhere.
Well, part of making a living is making sure people know where to find you and how to give you work. So that's a
There you
good
go.
thing.
Anybody
And where to
needs somebody to
buy the books and keep.
design all your games, this is the guy. This is the guy.
Exactly.
You can get in
And now I got
contact him
other
there.
kids
And he's got
involved
nothing
too,
on
so
his
we can
schedule, right?
blame
You've got nothing going on.
I got nothing. It's funny, actually, about every year, about November, I start going, oh man, I'm kind of running off the edge of the treadmill. I'm not sure if we're gonna have enough work come February or whatever. And then by the end of November, I'm like, oh my God, I got so much work, I don't know what to do. And then tax time comes around. I'm like, I don't have time. File the extension. So I always end up doing my taxes in like October or September.
Oh, damn.
Um, yeah, it's kind of nuts, but it's just, you have to try to figure out, is this something I need to do now or something I can push off? So things that
Right.
can be pushed off get pushed off, and things that need to be done right get done.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. We're going to do the live stream Q&A in just a second. Before we
Sure.
do that, though, I want to talk about coming up someone else who's worked on Marvel, some D&D. He's been on Dimension 20, writer, actor, GM. B. Dave Walters is going to be joining us. That's going to be
All right.
live at January 27th. That podcast will be available on the 28th. Of course, still to come, Carlos Cabrera, Jim Zub, and returning to Epic Realms, the one and only author, Kevin Hearn, is going to be joining us as well. So make sure to follow, rate, review, push all of those buttons. Make sure you get notifications from when we go live. So thank you, Matt Forbeck. Thank you for everybody watching. Thank you so much. Have a great night, and thank you for listening to Epic Realms.